So The Bikeriders was directed by Jeff Nichols and it stars Jodie Comer, Austin Butler, and Tom Hardy. And it's about these people who are all intertwined with each other, two of which are in a biker gang. One falls in love with one of these bikers, and it follows how they kind of like had this life together, how their lives kind of became ruined because of some of the activities they were involved in. And that's basically the movie. So this was a movie that I was intrigued by, but I wasn't really looking forward to. I was mainly intrigued by this movie because of the cast: Austin Butler, Jodie Comer, Tom Hardy. That sounds like a pretty good cast right there. Also, Jeff Nichols, in my opinion, is kind of an underrated director. He directed movies such as Mud. He directed Midnight Special. He also directed Take Shelter, which I thought was a criminally underrated movie. And I was definitely curious to see what this movie was like, especially considering this movie was also pushed back from last Christmas around the time of the Oscars. And it was like, I was wondering, like, why would this movie be pushed back until June of all months? Like, why would they try to release this now of all months? And watching this movie, I can understand why it wasn't really considered for a bunch of awards. It's not an awful movie by any means, but there's so much in this movie that I feel like is not great. Of all the Jeff Nichols movies I've seen, this may be his worst one. So let's start off with some of the things I do like. First off, I do think most of the actors do a fantastic job. Jodie Comer, I thought she did a really fantastic job. Even though her accent kind of goes in and out a bit, it sounds more like she should be in Fargo rather than somewhere like Chicago. But I digress. I did buy their relationships with, Austin Butler and like everyone else in the movie. Austin Butler is also pretty good in this movie. He's pretty stoic. He doesn't actually talk a whole lot in this movie, but by the end of the movie, he does at least have a good moment. I would say every actor in this movie at least has a good moment, where it's like maybe they did something really good or did something really funny and such. Tom Hardy also has a decent moment here and there. The actors do a fine job, even if Tom Hardy's accent can get a little annoying at times, but I'll talk about that later too. Among the other actors, Michael Shannon and Norman Reedus have very small roles, but they make the most of what they can. Michael Shannon has been in a lot of Jeff Nichols' movies, and he's really good in a lot of his movies, and I think he's very underrated, personally. Norman Reedus also has a pretty good moment here and there. Also, the bluegrass score in the beginning, well, at least in the first half, I thought was really well done. It was definitely kind of set the vibe of the movie pretty much, and I thought it was very well done. Definitely very different than a lot of movies out there. And admittedly, this movie can be pretty funny. There are a couple of moments where it's like some characters say something that's really funny, and that's actually intentionally funny. Like Michael Shannon and Mike Feist get into a little argument at one point during the movie, and it is pretty funny. Like especially when Michael Shannon's just really beaten down on Mike Feist, and Mike Feist has a great comeback. It's like, okay, you've earned that. He's definitely a decent actor, and definitely a actor that I really think is up and coming. Like, he was really good in West Side Story. I thought he was good in Challengers, and he's not the best here, but it's another role for him. And I do think this movie is really very well shot. The cinematography is incredible. It definitely looks like it comes from that era where the movie takes place in, which is kind of like in the 60s and 70s and such. Just like it definitely feels like a movie from that era, like like Easy Rider and stuff, such. It's like very well done. And I do like some of the themes of this movie. Basically, the movie kind of has this whole theme about masculinity and like how toxic it can be, how fragile it can be. And it's like it definitely is very well done. And I do think the movie definitely, I do think the theme of the movie is better than what we actually got with the movie. But because the movie itself, I feel like not a whole lot else is new with this movie. I feel like a lot of this movie is just kind of stuff that we've kind of just seen before. And a lot of the times, this movie, some of the not the actors, but like the characters kind of go through the same thing over and over again. Like Jodie Comer's character, even though I thought she was really good in this movie, I felt like her character kind of just did like a lot of the same things over and over again. She constantly tells, Austin Butler in this movie, I want to get out of here. I want to get out of here and such. I just did a horrible accent like some of the other actors in this movie. But it just kind of feels like it just kind of repeats itself. I kind of thought of this after walking out of this movie. It's like, can you imagine like if someone tried to be like Goodfellas, but they wound up being something like Sons of Anarchy? Nothing against Sons of Anarchy by any means, but like compared to Goodfellas, yeah, it's not Goodfellas, but oh well. And also, there are some moments in this movie where I just felt grossed out. Like some of the actions that are kind of like that happen to some of the characters, and I felt like it was just incredibly an incredible poor taste. And I just felt like, why would you do that? Particularly again with Jodie Comer's characters around the 2/3 mark of the movie. I felt like there was a moment where it's like, did you really need to go there? Like really? It was just nasty. And it's like, I thought we were all kind of moved on from that, honestly. And also, Mike Feist, as I mentioned, he has a good moment here and there, but his character is kind of pointless in this whole movie. The whole idea is that this movie's based around this like series of photographs and such. But to me, they never really did much with the photographs. Like, you kind of see Mike Feist take a few pictures every once in a while, but other than that, not a whole lot else is being done. And also, this movie can be a little melodramatic at times. Again, they kind of do a lot of the same things over and over again. Instead of coming off like as this very serious movie, maybe along the lines of something like, again, Goodfellas, and hell, even Sons of Anarchy, maybe it comes off a little bit too much like a soap opera. Like they kind of take long pauses, but a lot of the times it's just stuff that after a long pause they kind of say stuff that either we already know or they kind of just said over and over again, and it's just kind of annoying. By the end, it was like, we get it by now. We get it by now. And also, the last thing is the accents. The accents can be a little bit grating at times. Again, Jodie Comer does not sound like she's from Chicago. She sounds like she should be in Fargo, the movie, at least. Maybe not the movie, maybe the TV show. And Tom Hardy's accent, a little hard to get used to at times. Austin Butler's accent is at least okay, but like, he did the Elvis voice, and also he doesn't really speak too much in this movie. So maybe that kind of balanced itself out a little bit. So The Bikeriders, while not a terrible movie by any means, I can understand why it didn't really catch on as a potential, Oscar buzzy movie and such. Even though even though a lot of the actors do a fantastic job, even though there's a lot of, a lot of interesting themes and such, the score, the cinematography, and it can be admittedly pretty funny at times. It just kind of, when it tries to be a little bit too dramatic, it winds up being unintentionally funny. Whether it's the accents or whether it's just long dramatic pauses, or even a moment where it's like that crosses several lines for me. It's like I cannot really defend this movie anymore. And again, I feel like not a whole lot new was being done with this movie. It's like, again, for like a lot of these movies that are kind of like trying to be like, this was new at the time, this was new and engaging, and this is like new and like kind of changed the way we thought about such. Ironically, the movies that talk about this are not really that new. So it's just kind of annoying at this point. So I'll give the Bikeriders 2.5 out of 4 stars. Stream it. So, I mentioned Jeff Nichols is a pretty underrated director. Who is the most underrated director working in the industry right now? Comment down below, subscribe to the channel. This is Pat. Stay safe.